Greetings and salutations. Come on in. It is another edition of Revolutionary Hoodoo, New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes. All is truly and indeed a blessing. Come on in, come on in. The fire is hot. The water is a-boiling. Come on in. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And golden rain are waiting for you once again. Coming back to you. I'm longing for my family. Coming back to you. Out of bondage and now I am free. Da 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 da. Come on in, welcome, welcome this Monday, November 22nd, 2021. All is a blessing, all is a blessing. Get to experience that eclipse. Yes. I'm waiting for you once again. Coming back to you. I'm longing for my family. Coming back to you. Out of bondage is now I'm free. Greetings, greetings. Come on in, beloveds. Come on in. All is a blessing. It's Wellness Monday. Come on in, come on in. Greetings, JP Tarot Readings. Come on in, beloved. Greetings to you and yours as well. Keita Coleman, welcome, beloved. Come on in. All is a blessing. This is a live broadcast. Come on in, come on in. Greetings, Nina Lloyd. All is a blessing. My beloved cousin, Lakifia M. Come on in. Greetings, beloved. Yes, I do that from time to time and every now and again. Greetings, everyone. Greetings, Electro Vibes. Come on in. Greetings, greetings. Yes, all is a blessing. Peace and blessings, Imani Sankofa, sacred love lessons. Come on in, all is a blessing. Greetings, greetings. Come back home. Greetings, Blog Talk Radio, area code 845-277-9143. 845 is the area code, toll-free area code 845-277-9143. And you can always follow the StreamYard link scrolling at the bottom of the screen and join me here live on screen. Greetings, Danette Gibbs, beloved, greetings, greetings. All is a blessing. Eshu Elegbuana Kosi Were Awo Onlo Uto Ni Iwo Ada Afan Bo Osi Obatalami Itani Ebo Onilio Abanishu. Eshu is the respected elder who flogs, confronts, and uncovers fools. The one verse in Mysteries uses truth to own you. He causes scatter to feed poverty. Obatala shakes rascals to have sacrifice. The owner of warnings is the one who is Eshu. Aboru, Aboye, Aboshishe, Ashe. May our Ebo reach a room. May our Ebo be accepted. May our Ebo allow what we desire to come to pass. And so we say, Ashe and Asheo. Divine all blessed greetings and salutations. I am, yes, I am sitting with you now live, virtually, verbally, cosmically, quantum, universally. You are with the Divine Prince, Pan-African Spiritualist, Practitioner, Author, and Advisor, Elagun Oloye, Hoodoo Obeya Bokua, and soon to be reality show TV executive producer. But we'll discuss that just in a little bit later. Sharing with you in all things spiritual, mystical, metaphysical, cosmic, universal, evolutionary, revolutionary, healing, and holistic from a Pan-African Hoodoo world spiritualist perspective. Understanding that all is truly and indeed a blessing. If you can just see beyond the veils, for it is all just an illusion and a test, and one of the greatest divine mysteries of this life cycle. This is indeed my constant prayer, my mantra, affirmation, reverberation, reiteration, and it is my ever-living reality. All is a blessing is crucial to the very foundation of my understanding, my teaching, my walk, my work, my demonstration along this divine, all blessed life path and journey. It is how I, the Divine Prince, makes sense out of all that we're challenged with here in our daily existence on Mother, Father, Earth. And it is my personal place of power and understanding. That place from where I begin, the place from where I realize and crystallize all my endeavors, understanding that I and I alone create and co-create my divine destiny, and I alone create and co-create my divine, all blessed reality. And so it is. Ashe. Again, greetings and salutations to each and every one that I've recognized, or maybe I have not recognized you as of yet. Thank you so much, Imani Sankofa. Greetings, Chef Bougie, and you and yours. Welcome this Monday, November 22nd, 2021. And I am emanating and vibrating with you and for you again live, virtually, verbally, quantumly, quantum universally, cosmically, from this working temple of the House of the Divine Prince. Thai Potions, Hoodoo Central, in this legendary, historic, beautiful, and most enchanted city in America, New Orleans, Louisiana, the land of my ancestors and those who came before me along this spiritualist, Hoodoo, Obeya life path and journey, passing down the great Obeya stick, along with the knowledge of the life-giving herbs, roots, plants, rituals, spirits, minerals, ceremonies, sacred ceremonies, indeed the legacy, the culture, the tradition, the history of our sacred stories. And be mindful, the city of New Orleans is, as always, has picked up and moved on again. Just as we did post-Hurricane Katrina and still continue to rebuild, just as we are now doing post-Hurricane Ida and continue to rebuild, just as we are doing now in the midst of this enduring pandemic, epidemic, and we continue to pick up and again move forward. So tourism is coming back. Activities and cultural events are coming back. Second lines indeed have returned. And I thank each and every one of you who visit and support my TikTok page and my Instagram page, as well as my Facebook and Twitter, who have seen and liked and reshare my recent videos of Second Lines, our sort of seasonal Second Lines that we have in the fall, going into the winter on Sundays, Second Line Sunday, if you will. And then, of course, our more important funerary culture, death culture, that's so unique and world-renowned to New Orleans. The jazz funeral, the first line, the second line, that takes place when people in our community that we love and honor and respect pass on, make their transition. We indeed send them off in style, we indeed send them off with a unique ceremonial ritual formula that is crafted here in the soil of New Orleans, but was born and birthed in the ground and the seeds and the foundation of our West African ancestors, who indeed still till this day acknowledge the transitioning from one dimensional space of reality and awareness to the other, with very public celebrations and displays. So if you haven't done so already, please follow me, support me, like me, join me on TikTok, Instagram, all my social media outlets, many of which some of you are now listening and sharing this broadcast. Please remember to share. Stop now, if you will. I don't mind. Stop now and share. Click like, follow if you haven't done so already. And particularly on my blog Talk Radio. Many of you still have not followed me, subscribe to me on the blog Talk Radio. And this indeed ensures that you get the notices when I'm broadcasting or when I might not be broadcasting and have to sort of back out of a podcast last minute due to increasing schedule. So this was all sort of a precursor to, and many of you know, so the name of this song, My Schedule is Overwhelming. My schedule is overwhelming normally, but now, again, with this sort of post, and post might not be the right thing to say, but this next stage of pandemic, epidemic experience, as people do begin to return to the city, tourists, guests, godchildren, initiates, clients, announced and unannounced. Indeed, the schedule is overwhelming. And as we move forward in the filming of the reality TV show, that will only increase. I've done due diligence, I believe, and I've done my best to sort of ease you into this and sort of give you some heads up that this was coming. And I'm grateful to those who have scheduled appointments, are scheduling appointments, do have RSVPs in place, and are planning to come and share and participate in either services and consultation with me. Indeed, our Sacred Story, our Experience Plus tour with the beloved Denise Augustine as historian and tour guide and spiritual godmother and elder, but also as myself giving the New Orleans and the more Pan-African perspective about voodoo and its manifestations, and not just here in New Orleans, but what makes New Orleans unique to Cuba, Puerto Rico, Brazil, Panama, indeed Ghana, Togo, West Africa. And so we invite you, please. The seats are filling up quickly, as you can imagine. People are now realizing things are in motion, and the pin-up energy of not vacationing, not traveling. Many of you are just beyond that now. Some of you have already been here in the last 30 days, 60 days, and indeed, I'm grateful for you, indeed. But I invite you to get your email requests in right now. Readings, services, consultations, initiations, ancestral work and divination. You most certainly want to do that. I can only imagine that once the pilot airs and the reality show and the trailers begin to air, slots will become much more limited. So please, some are scheduling already 2 months out, 3 months out, 6 months out. So get your email request in to DivinePrince at houseofthedivineprince.com for your tour plus experience. And we will be more than happy to accommodate you. We will also be accommodating both my clients and godchildren who are already on board with me, but then those who will be coming in the coming weeks will have an opportunity to have some exposure by way of the reality show based on your comfort. Everybody's not going to want to participate in this. Everyone is not necessarily meant to be a part of this, but those who will and would want to, we are beginning to already create space so that we can accommodate everyone and be well structured in our scheduling and our timing as we move forward. So I invite you to reach out to me. Greetings, Danette Gibbs. Yes, beloved, Danette Gibbs will be here. Yes. So I welcome you all. Greetings. Is it Jean Williams? Greetings, beloved. Yeah, this hasn't been done before. What I'm attempting to put together here, me and sort of my crew. This hasn't been done before. This will not be like anything you can even envision right now in your head. As you can imagine, just this subject matter, this topic matter, this energy that we bathe ourselves in when we create the sacred space, at noon, when we create the sacred space within the dynamics of my divination. And I understand many of you, say for my clients and my godchildren, and indeed those who have helped to continue to popularize the Big Frida reality TV show. Many of you have never seen the inner workings of my divination and reading consultation services. But those who indeed have, even on the phone, even in Zoom or Skype, can tell you it is an experience unto itself. My average consultation runs 90 minutes to 2 hours. And we are not repeating information. We are not sort of doing the, feel good fortune teller kind of thing. We're really hitting into details and specifics and scenarios and ways of viewing our realities so that we can better prepare, better serve, better grow, better move forward as individuals, and then individuals that feed society, that feed culture, that feed tradition. And I want to talk a little bit about that today in the development of spiritual gifts, how those paths, those energies, those inroads tend to intersect. Thank you for that, Danette Gibbs. Those are things that I should be saying, but I don't think to say because I'm always so busy trying to focus ahead on what my planned topic is. But yes, indeed, I have years of podcast available. I started podcasting in Blog Talk Radio in, I believe, 2008, and I've been in YouTube, I believe, since maybe 2013, but then started doing podcasting, live broadcast through YouTube, really right before the pandemic, and then it sort of picked up a little bit more, again, riding the momentum of the pandemic. So I'm grateful to each and every one of you who, no, I started YouTube in 2007. Yeah, 2007, but I didn't start doing live podcasts until more recently, using the YouTube platform. So much of that and much more that you all cannot even imagine, except for those who've actually been here to the city, will be shared and sort of revealed in the reality show. And I don't want you to get the misunderstanding that the reality show will be about me. Indeed, it will be about my experience in this environment, my experience in the city of New Orleans, and sort of my own personal journey to where we all are here today. But many others will be sort of focused on and featured within the dynamics of the reality show as it relates to spirituality and tradition in New Orleans. Other practitioners, resources where we shop, places where we gather and connect again at the cultural level, Congo Square, and of course the very streets of our community where we come together will also be featured, but also the dynamics of what indeed my manifestation of New Orleans voodoo and tradition looks like. No two practitioners, no two priests, no two bishops, no two babalaos, no two imams, no two therapists are going to do things exactly the same. Indeed, there is a foundation from which we grow from, we pull from. And in the journey of self-discovery, this is just a sort of an ad product of that journey of self-discovery. Maybe we start with dream sequence. Maybe we start with synchronicities of events that tend to occur, over and over, or in cycles or seasons that we begin to take note of, along our journey. Often it's trauma that opens that third eye energy, that opens that spiritual awareness, that beginning to seek something beyond ourselves, something beyond what's right in our face, something beyond what we might be experiencing at any given time. And in a discussion of spiritual gifts and the development of spiritual gifts, first and foremost, we stand on our ancestral shoulders, right? We stand on the might and power and strength of great ancestral shoulders. And for those who are new to this is not just, mythology, spirituality, hoodoo, but science now confirms what we've always understood, that ancestral memory survives indeed in the blood. So our activities, our rituals, our ceremonies, our sacred spaces created for the acknowledgement of our ancestors, the meditating with and on our ancestors, the listening to, which then requires inner listening to, is sort of one shoulder to the other shoulder of personal development. In Yoruba, they talk about ori. In Voodoo, we talk about labe tet, or head cleansing, or head washing, or third eye activation and opening. But indeed, we can't and are not separate from our bodies nor our blood, i.e. our ancestral lineage and heritage. And we are not separate from our connection to spirit, which often manifests in feelings, emotions, intuitive inclinations, vibrations, smells, how we indeed tune in with our environment. So in the development of spiritual gifts, it might be important for me to suggest that we are all born with spiritual gifts. Indeed, the Black woman is God. The Black woman is God. The Black woman is God. And so therefore we are birthed from the womb of the goddess, making us all gods and goddesses. Just as we are all human at birth, we are not adults at birth. We go through a process of growth and development, but indeed we are all gods. We're all born God. And then on a journey of self-development, self-awareness, and reconnectedness, if you will. And so we're all born with spiritual gifts, or access to spiritual gifts. But these spiritual gifts are often triggered by something, particularly within the dynamics of our culture, of Western culture, right? Which does not make room for, does not teach spiritual gifts. Not even in the church, not even in the synagogue, not even in the mosque. No one's teaching spiritual gifts or how to operate within spiritual gifts. Not even in the sanctified church. Ain't no speaking in tongue classes except for on TikTok. Okay. Just on TikTok do you see the speaking in tongue classes, but there's no real, that sort of humor on the lighter end of it. Sarcasm, maybe in the middle of it, and maybe outright mocking, on the more aggressive side of it. But there's no spiritual class. There's no teaching of interpretation of tongues. There's no teaching of what tongues mean, what tongues do, what's the tongue's purpose. None of that. And so there is a bit of an alphabet list of checkpoints that I created some time ago of triggers to spiritual gifts. Triggers that we either activate ourselves or activate it around us, sometimes by people, places, and things, environments, experiences. So indeed, God, however you define or visualize or understand God in its cosmic universal greatness, even those words might be limiting to what God is, but indeed God, the divine, the cosmic universal master creator, plants the seed of spiritual gifts, gives spiritual gifts as it will, has implanted spiritual gifts, because we tend to think of spiritual gifts as, one person so much more spectacular than the other, as opposed to we all in nature find gifts that show up in varying degrees, varying levels of proficiency, dependent on our attention to it. The second trigger or source is indeed ancestors and ancestral memory. We know families such as the, oh wow, I'm drawing a blank now. Trombone Shorty's beloved mother, who we celebrated in second line over the weekend in her transitioning to the next level, the beloved Lois Nelson Andrews. Yeah, I'm trying to do too many things at once, y'all. Forgive me. So may she rest in peace. I know I'm not pronouncing her name right, and I can't get my thoughts together right now, but we have whole families that possess gifts of musical talent or artistic talent, creative talents like making things, creating things, whole families of performers, the family that favors medical careers, the family that favors education. And so indeed we have triggers that are pushed by our ancestors themselves that show up in our blood. Ancestral memory indeed shows up in our blood. And then that which shows up in the more spiritual manifestations that we often attribute to ancestors, like dreams, like synchronicities and overt signs out in your daily walk that the ancestors are talking to you or showing you things or trying to get your attention. A death is a major trigger. Death in my alphabet letters of spiritual triggers to the development of spiritual gift. We all respond to death in various ways. Others respond to death, by going within. Others respond to death by becoming more social and coming out. It affects us all, sometimes even depending on who the person is who's passing away. A parent, someone close, a close relative, a spouse, indeed a loved one can sometimes trigger the event of spiritual gifts and development of spiritual gifts. And particularly in the case when you are otherwise unaware of your propensity to have spiritual gifts, but then someone close to you passes and you are now seeing them in the dreams, or they're talking to you in your dreams. This is often not just a spontaneous, one-time sort of event in a person's life, but indeed a trigger or showing of deeper spiritual gifts that could then be developed, enhanced, focused on. Health, sickness, letter D, health and sickness are indeed triggers to spiritual change and transformation. We hear of people being diagnosed with cancers and other crazy, spontaneous, diagnosis, accidents, car accidents, shootings, who then are spiritually transformed during those events. Their eyes are open spiritually in a way that maybe they hadn't had time to think about, didn't want to think about, hadn't noted, had no reason to pay attention to, depending on our upbringing. And then the sick event or the health event sort of transformed that. We've seen that displayed in sitcoms where someone else's tragic health event, then has a transformatorial effect on another character. I'm thinking right now, Will Smith, when Carlton got shot trying to be sort of ghetto and hanging out in the hood and prove that he could, be as black as the next guy, quote unquote, and how that affected Will, spiritually, as a character, spiritually. And it triggered sort of a inward reflection of your spirit body. Who am I? What condition is my spirit body in? How active is my spirit body really? How inviting have I been to allowing in, that demonstration? Some of you are blocking out that demonstration out of fear. I hear that at least once a day in the context of a reading. I've tried to avoid, I've hidden from, I didn't want to know out of fear of a spiritual gift. Some of you associate having a spiritual gift with the occult. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more after I get through my alphabet list. But so some of you have a negative connotation of any spirit gift, not understanding that spirit gifts are explicitly mentioned and detailed in all world religions, including the Bible, including Christianity, Catholicism, Islam. But the application of the spirit gift, the power in which the spirit gifts are being sort of motivated by, this idea that it's either God or the devil, has prevented some people from allowing these triggers to then become active points of conscious focus of development. So indeed, accidents, letter E would be accidents, can create spiritual triggers for spiritual gifts. We hear things like, my life flashed before my eyes. I saw my children in the future. I saw I'm pregnant, but I saw my baby. Those kind of things where accidents, scare tactics, created by life, where you're just scared out of your wits in that moment, usually for what we believe to be a valid reason. But it creates sort of that trigger, judicial cases. You got to go before the judge. I'm thinking now, Tasha Mack, remember the sitcom, The Game, and how she would pray, Lord Jesus, if you just let my son live, I'll stop cussing and I'll stop drinking, I'll go to church mode. We do this sort of checklist, but we also do that in relation to paying attention to when spirit is speaking to us, intuition is speaking to us, spirit gifts are trying to make a showing for us. Letter F, emotion, anxiety, fear, stress, worry, desire, anticipation, many other words that we could pull out can invoke a scenario where we are triggered spiritually, empathically, intuitively, visually, vibrationally, audibly. And I'm going to talk more about the different types of spiritual gifts. I think we also tend to over focus on what a spiritual gift and what a spiritual gift means. Uh, we immediately go to the tarot card deck. We immediately go to, I'm a psychic reader. We immediately go to the fact that I see things and hear things and perceive things, then I'm somehow obligated to tell people about it or offer that as a service. Particularly when we're new on our journey, often these triggers, not often, always these triggers, when we're new on our journey, have the goal of sort of self-development, self-awareness, giving you space to test the spirit, giving you space to see the spirit manifest, you know, before you put yourself in a position to do harm to yourself or to others. You know, I can't compare that to the chemistry lab kits. Back in my mama's day, who was born in 1940s, you know, they had chemistry kits that kids could buy, you know, at the toy store, you know, which eventually got taken off the market for obvious reasons. Um, Poisonings, explosions, just, you know, for obvious reasons. And so I don't view the development of spirit gifts in the wrong hands, immature hands, very much different than that. It could be dangerous to possess and be aware of a gift and then not use it with a degree of integrity, morality, scruples. And we don't always understand the dynamics of what that is at 15, 16, 19, 20, 25, 30. We often don't understand the fullness of that, particularly when we have our own shadow work, ego, self-esteem, how we treat ourselves and others, where we place our value, all those trip ups that we find along the way of our personal spiritual journey. And so these triggers, these signs are for self-reflection. These are indeed for waking you up as the individual to your connection to God and spirit and nature and humanity, and what that means about first you and who you are, but then more importantly, who we grow into, who we become. Nature, letter G, nature is a trigger to spiritual gifts. Some of you connect much better and much easier to cats and dogs than you do to animals and people. I have a very close friend slash relative who's very interconnected with animals, um, in a very empathic, intuitive, call it psychic sort of way, and in no way does the person envision themselves as spiritually inclined, but indeed they are. And many of you are spiritually inclined and are running like Job from the belly of the whale, you know, are running from it, you know. And I sometimes equate that as a sort of a moral, integral, um, character accomplishment, because sometimes it's really about, you know, understanding the value. Some of you indeed understand the value of possessing a spiritual gift, especially a known spiritual gift, one that you openly acknowledge and that others are aware of. And we're going to talk about others being aware of your spiritual gift even before you become aware of your spiritual gift. But that's further down on my list of triggers to spiritual gifts and the development of spiritual gifts. Synchronicity, numbers, repetition. Very few people know, maybe even my intimate family members, that I count numbers a lot, especially in my head. There's certain things that I do. I count numbers, but it's also sort of a byproduct of a connectedness to synchronicity and repetition that I've been aware of since I was a teenage runaway. I remember being in Hollywood in the 1980s and hanging out with a friend or two and always, you know, making comment that
One.
always
Power off.
making comment about seeing certain people in certain places and in certain environments and always kind of knowing who we would see again. You know, that lady right there, we're gonna see that lady right there again, you know, and it would show up, you know, as a spiritual repetition. Synchronicity, you talk about, you know, a particular topic, subject matter, and then the next commercial on TV, they're talking about that topic or subject matter. Or then someone comes into the house, the break room, you know, the work room, and they're talking about that subject, topic, or matter. That's synchronicity. And then of course numbers, how numbers show up. Certain numbers repeat for many of you in the dynamic of this audience. You see the repetition of particular numbers or certain numbers. And so I invite you, while we're at letter H in my alphabet, to always keep a journal. Always, always, always journal. The more spiritually inclined you envision yourself to be, the more spiritually inclined you envision yourself in becoming, the more I must stress to you the importance of keeping a journal. And for my younger audience, if it's going to make it easier for you to do, call it a grimoire, call it a magic book, you know, call it, you know, what did the charm girls on TV show call a book? The book of secret, the book of shadows. Call it whatever you need. But keeping a journal, a detailed journal, is critical to spiritual growth and development. My mother, every bit of 78 years old, still journals. Is a detailed journaler. And is someone who would probably still suggest she's on a spiritual growth and journeys, still at 78. You're still trying to hear from spirit. You're still trying to hear from God. And for those of us in ATR, you're still trying to hear from the ancestors with clarity. You're still trying to hear from the Orisha with clarity, whether you be 15, 35, 85. And so keeping a journal also has very cathartic, therapeutic, and physical biological health benefits. It helps to fight what we once called senility and old timers, Alzheimer's syndrome. Um, Journaling, doing detailed thought activities, and of course, taking one of my favorite teas, my wandering Jew. But that's another topic. Okay. Letter I would be dreams as a trigger to spiritual gifts. And again, many of these previously spoken of triggers, synchronicity, repetition, numbers, can show up also in dreams. Accident, death can show up also in dreams. God speaks to us in dreams. Ancestors speak to us in dreams. All preceding letters can show up as a manifestation in our dream state. And keeping detailed dreams, again, I think is a critical point to spiritual health and mental health, mental wellness. And when I say mental health, I don't mean imbalanced mental health. I mean mental health, just like we say physical health, just like we say financial health. We need to demystify the words mental health. So when I say mental health, I always mean a good thing, a good state, a healthy state. And so dreams help us to sort of process, almost like a computer needs to be refracted from time to time. I know they do that sort of automatically now. You got programs, you don't even have to think about that anymore. Back in the day, you had to manually go in and do that, or your computer would be jacked up. What it does is it puts things back in place. It cleans up your broken links, your broken URLs, dead, alleyways and dead roads that don't lead to anywhere. Our dreams also act sort of in a biological capacity, much like a computer, to sort of bring forward that memory that we are trying to process, but also growth. I think we grow a great deal in our memory, in our dream state, and not just when we're infants. We seem to be aware that infants dream and it's a part of their growth cycle, but we dream and it's indeed a part of our growth cycle, our spiritual growth cycle and reality. And again, it's another safe zone. It can be another safe zone for the application and experimentation and awareness of certain things that could otherwise be harmful in real world waking reality. And so those things happen in the dream state for a reason, for some understanding, for some processing of something, for some development of something in our spiritual body, spiritual repertoire that we can't see with clarity. So letter J would then be visions, dreams and visions. For my Christians listening to me, your Bible talks about dreams and visions. I think it's old people would have dreams and young people would have visions, or it's the reverse, is it? But you know what I'm talking about. Letter K would be daydreams. So dreams. Letter I, dreams. Letter J, visions. Letter K, daydreams. And then letter L would be imagination. Letter M, creativity. And I sort of brought these all forward, these five together, because dreams, visions, daydreams, imagination, creativity are all just thin veils to the spirit realm. Thin veils to the spirit realm. We make the spirit realm, rightfully so, to be this really huge, complex, multifaceted, cosmic, cosmos, universe. And indeed it is. Indeed it is. But we then treat dreams, visions, daydream, imagination, and sometimes creativity as if it's somehow child's play, as if it's somehow what you do in kindergarten, with crayons and paper, with paper mache, in elementary school. Maybe we take it a little bit more seriously when we say fine arts. But fine arts, jazz, painting, sculpting, dance, fashion, very thin veils to the spirit realm. Indeed, the creative process, very thin veil between waking reality and the spirit realm and the creative zone, the creative space. Indeed, I believe and teach that each and every time an artisan, a creator, even creators of computer programming, creators of plasticware, creators of housewares, have to at some point go into dreams, visions, daydreams, imagination, and then letter N and letter O, intuition and empathy. Creativity was letter M, like Mary. Because you have to, as an inventor, see the future, at least for 30 seconds, long enough to get it down on paper, long enough to blueprint it. You got to wake up from that dream, that daydream, that vision, and hold it in your memory long enough to write it down, to be conscious and cognizant enough to write it down and value it for what it brings or may very well be bringing to all of our futures. So dreams, visions, daydreams, imagination, creativity are indeed triggers, thin veil gateways to the spirit realm, and then the development of spiritual gifts. You may not see the development of, the newest kitchen plasticware as, highly spiritual in any way. But that creator had to envision something often something that already exists but with a problem, or something that they felt could be improved on, or could be highlighted, could be, innovation can then be applied to. And so there's some time with meditating in the future. There is some time in meditating on what it might look like on the other end. And as a runaway kid on the street, I often spent many hours meditating on envisioning a future that, you know, made no real world sense at the time. Didn't make any sense to me or anybody who I might have even wanted to share that with, but saw it so clearly in the dream, saw it so crystal in the vision, could pull it up so accurately and consistently in the daydream, could create it and recreate it in the imagination. And then creativity would then, we find small ways to then bring those parts of ourselves to the forefront. Skills, education, knowledge, taking a class, maybe changing a tire, changing a certain look, a certain behavior, and then it becomes a part of who we are. It becomes reality. The act of journaling takes things out of the realm of the mist, MIST, out of the realm of vision and dream, and brings it into reality first on paper. And then it becomes a book, then it becomes a song, then it becomes a play, then it becomes a building, an architectural wonder, then it becomes a social construct, then it becomes a movement. So intuition, letter N, empathy, letter O, are ways that beginning at the top of our alphabets, God, the divine, the cosmos, the universe, the ancestors, even death, speak to us in relation to our spiritual gifts. I can remember before my mother and the man who was once upon a time her husband and my father. I remember when they both claimed to have had the same dream about my father's mother, who was saved and sanctified and evangelical Christian when she was living, riding in a chariot after she had passed away. And they both took that as a sign that she was trying to call them into evangelical Christianity. So the power of dreams and visions and daydreams and imagination and creativity and intuition and empathy cannot be overstated. Cannot be overstated. Particularly if you ask somebody who may be dealing with imbalances in their mental health. Dreams, visions, daydreams, imagination, creativity, intuition, and empathy become really, really major points of reality. What's real and what's not real. So letter P, triggers to spiritual development, you being tapped on your shoulder that you got spiritual gifts that need to be developed. Music, sound, and vibration. My first toy was the piano. Age 3, age 4, I'm playing, songs by ear. Of course, Mary Had a Little Lamb to gospel, to what you hear on the radio every day. Music. Music also for those who are not necessarily musicians or singers. Music has an emotional, spiritual, biological, chemical effect on us. Some of us are triggered by oldies. Some of us are triggered by certain songs. They take you back to a particular moment in time, a particular place and event, a particular person, place, or thing. Music, and of course sound. So if you've ever been in a nightclub and you stood 2 feet from the biggest speaker in the house, which I foolishly did back in my early 20s, you feel that sound, that vibration penetrate your body, coming through the speakers. And we now, call it new age, and we are now doing singing bowls and and ringing bells and chimes, and are consciously using vibration to cleanse chakras, rebalance chakras, get them to spin and rotate correctly and in balance again, to remove traumatic programs from the past, trauma programs from childhood, trauma programs from past life events by way of sound, music, vibration. We do that here in the house using things that create sound and vibration, of course, but also quartz crystal to realign and rebalance. A natural, uncut, unpolished, untampered with, but perfect quartz crystal vibrates. Vibrates. Many times you're getting chipped stones, you're getting stones that have been polished in some way, that have been damaged in some way, but they vibrate. They have what's called singing quartz. You rub them together, they hum, they ring as an extension of this vibration. A laser quartz is a particular variety of quartz. It tends to be long and kind of twisted, like a witch's finger, as a pick compared to other quartz crystals that are symmetrically much wider in the middle. This is often not much bigger than a jumbo pencil. And they have a unique patterning on the outside they call laser wand quartz. And if you tap them gently with another piece of quartz, they ring and they vibrate. I took two of them and put them together in a piece of copper tubing back in the mid 80s and started making magic wands that vibrate by way of this component. So vibration can also alter states of consciousness, states of awareness. I'm hypersensitive to earthquake vibration. After having lived in California for almost a decade, I'm hypersensitive. So sensitive, I was here in Treme on the phone a few years back. In a minute, y'all gonna know what year I'm talking about. And I'm on the phone with Tony Val, and I said, girl, that was an earthquake. She said, boy, what you talking about? We ain't got no earthquakes like that in no New Orleans. I said, that was an earthquake. That was an earthquake. I lived in LA long enough to know what an earthquake is. I know a rolling quake. I know a jolt quake. It's different kind of quakes. If y'all ain't never been to California, never experienced an earthquake. It's different types of quakes now. I felt it. I knew what it was in that moment. It was pronounced. And 9 minutes later, 10 minutes later, it's on the news. Haiti had just had this major earthquake. And I felt it. I felt the jolt right here in Treme. So vibrations can alter consciousness. Vibration can alter mood. Vibration can alter even third eye sight, how your pituitary gland in your third eye sees and perceives things, views things in any particular moment. Cue, lyrics, words. Now, of course, that's music, and we already have music on the list. But now I'm talking about specifically lyrics, separate from the music, words, chants, prayers, affirmations, poems, spoken word. The right wordsmith can alter your consciousness, can alter who you are, can alter your vibration. Lauryn Hills and the Jill Scotts and the Gil Scott Heron and just those who have put words together, your Dr. King, your Malcolm X, words that repeatable, that create and program mantras and affirmations and points of change within our consciousness, lyrics, words, chants, prayers, affirmations that you hear and you can never unhear them. You hear and they alter you forever. You never can go back to another way of seeing or understanding after having seen, I'm sorry, after having heard and taking in certain words, lyrics. And then the repetition of mantras, of course, includes vibration, the speaking and the re-speaking, the telling and the retelling of words that empower and give you strength, but also alter things at the chemical, vibrational, subconscious level that awaken us as a trigger to having spiritual gifts and then moving forward with what to do with them. Greetings, Uni Univero. Greetings, beloved. Thank you so much for joining us. Um, she asks, why do we humans have to be gods if we are all the same? What do I profit to know that I am just the ordinary Joe? I think what you're saying is really representative of what type of God consciousness has been placed on us by uh, the three dominant world religions, which first of all teach you that you are God with a little g, and that second that you are somehow ordinary Joe. And I've been taught and understand just the possession of consciousness in the degree that we possess consciousness is a godlike act. The fact that we aren't like the chipmunks and the squirrels and the fish that sort of go about their what we call animal nature and routine. Don't worry about storing food necessarily. Well, you know, we know chipmunks and squirrels plan for the winter, but aren't necessarily you know, as invested in the deep freezers and the storage closets that humans have taken on, housing, transportation, you know. So those things within themselves make us gods, co-creators with God, with the big G. Prior to the world indoctrination from these main global religious sources, I don't believe we saw ourselves as quote unquote separate from God. We're here looking up to God. We're here raising our arms up to God, particularly when we look at the Aztec, the Maya, the Inca, the ancient Zulu, you know, the ancient ethnic groups of the world, and how they viewed God and themselves and their relationship to the creators. There was clearly a time in history where we were sort of co-creators, extensions of, and then became indoctrinated with the idea that we were somehow small g and had to look for a big G to sort of do things. I also think that by way of these main world religions, another flaw in sort of that thinking is that things that we should take responsibility for, like the air, like the water, like nature, like our own damn survival, you know, like the bees and the pollen and the honey that's going to continue to keep our vegetation alive. That godlike act. You can also, if you will, univero, interchange God with extraterrestrial. Because personally, I'm open to that as a conversation. Just maybe we've misinterpreted extraterrestrial for God. Just maybe we've misinterpreted it. And when I say extraterrestrial, I don't mean alien, because when we say alien, we start thinking, you know, Mars and green people, and you know, and that may or may not be, you know, true on some level. But I mean extraterrestrial, meaning that all life on the planet, all things on the planet, for the most part, originate, for all parts, originate from the cosmos. including our ancestors, including wherever humanity was seeded from. And so just maybe the big G is, ourselves in a much higher evolved state of being than how we view our animal, mammal selves right now, which is that much more why the development of spiritual gifts, paying attention to the triggers, is so critical. Because indeed, when we don't pay attention to these sort of spiritual signs and triggers, we can indeed look back in history, look back in time, when humanity absolutely were in the depths of their animal nature, and the killing and war. Forgive me, I had the hiccups, y'all. Killing and warring and sort of fighting amongst ourselves, even today, is animalistic in its nature in comparison to the God consciousness of humanity that wants to believe we have rules and laws and protocols and mores and values and ways of honoring and acknowledging, ourselves as we would others. Perhaps that within itself are signs of our God nature, of our God selves, of our as opposed to, our more animal, more carnal selves. Thank you all. I appreciate everybody. Jean, Uniborough, Danette, yes. Oh, okay, that's good to know. Okay, I like the game actually. That was a good show. That's good to know. Is life a game? Now I know you asked somebody else that question, but yeah, I would say it is. Absolutely. We were referencing the TV show The Game. But is life a game? Absolutely it is. Is it a serious game? Absolutely. Absolutely. But is it, let me reword your question. Is it harmful to see life as a game? No. I don't see it as harmful to see life as a game any more than a chemist sees the game of sort of trial and error, testing one thing against another to solve a problem or to find a solution. I think about the Rubik's Cube. I think about chess. I think about other quote unquote games that we, attribute a higher degree of sort of intellect or reasoning to, in comparison to how we sort of envision life and how we go at life. So seeing life as a game is beneficial to some people who set out every day to sort of win the game, to acquire a certain amount of chips in the game, depending on whatever kind of game they're playing, whatever industry, they may be operating in. Some people see, selling, you know, being, a guy or girl on the floor at the mall and trying to convince you to buy, cologne or buy cosmetics, might be seen as a game. But at the end of the day, it's about those chips and the paycheck, those commissions, and then we call that real life. The sort of chessboard maneuvering of politicians and voting and the things attributed to that. And I include those who do not vote because you are a part of the game. Not voting is a part of the game. And so you are indeed participants in the game, when you don't vote. And whoever wins, the game takes the position, takes the title. So I don't think it's harmful to see life as a game. No, not at all. Uh, Okay. Okay, I'm not going to dispute the magic book because I interpret that a little bit differently than most people. Um, yeah, but I understand what you're saying. I do. No, my mother doesn't go to the gym, but she's active for a woman of her age, and continues to seek to be active for a woman of her age. But no, she doesn't go to the gym. And my mom does suffer some disabilities that would be a little bit of a complication for her going out, in public setting like that. Let's see. Anthony, is someone trying to go into journaling and has never journaled before in his life? What is a good tip or some tips in general to start journaling? Like, what am I writing down? What am I looking for? Okay, that's a good question, Anthony. In the beginning, keep it simple. How do you feel? What do you remember from your, if you, let's say you're doing morning journaling, how do you feel? What do you remember from your dream? Because often those two things may intersect each other. How you feel is how you feel in life. But when you do it first thing in the morning, it could also be how you feel. And then there's a residual of what you might have been thinking, doing, acting out in your dream state before you became consciousness. So before you regain consciousness. So how you feel, what does that mean to you? Because you might say, oh, I feel great, I'm ready to kick ass. Okay, great. But you might say, I don't feel great. So then be willing to ask yourself and push through with the why, with the why. So you might write down how you feel, what you need, what you're looking for, what you're seeking. Often the answers to those questions will begin to show up in your journal. How you feel, what you need, what you're really looking for, what you're seeking. Because we can also become disconnected following a routine of 9 to 5 or working a job, or we follow a routine and can get disconnected even from our own wants and needs. You begin to put your children's needs, your spouse's needs, your partner's needs, your landlord's needs, the bills collector's needs ahead of your needs, especially in the Western world. And so we get disconnected from what we really want, what we really need, what our goals really are, what we're really working towards. So sometimes that too will begin to come out through your journaling. Some more advanced journals are also keeping up with the cosmos. So they might be keeping up with the positions of the moon at the time. Planetary positions, my astrologers are keeping journaling that. For indeed, they want to be able to validate certain conjunctions, certain retrogrades, certain behaviors that might be showing up astrologically in their waking everyday experience. So they might add that as well. Um, then I got to a place, probably in my late 20s, where I was also including sort of creative visions and daydreams. I could literally, sit at my desk for 3 minutes and zone out and come back, with a whole business idea or some creative idea in my head. And I had to learn to start writing that down and stop ignoring that. Some of you are getting business ideas, innovative ideas, inventor ideas. One of you got a spouse that's really good at that, creating stuff off the top of their head, out their mouth, but they never write it down. They never take it seriously. It never becomes a blueprint. It never becomes a real item. So that can come through in journaling. Um, a lyrist and musicians journal to some degree, but they may be limiting their journal to just poet work or lyrics, um, maybe their feelings and their emotions, but there are varying degrees of um, information that you can include in the journal to better help you understand who you are, who you're becoming, and certainly what you're doing. So, some of you claim to be doing ritual work, claim to be working with herbs. That should be journaled. What plants are you working with? What herbs are you working with? Today is Osei Ifa, Fa, for my voodoo practitioners. So there's always plants involved in that. So what plants am I using? What herbs am I using? How did I prepare them? How did I utilize them? Some of the quote unquote wives' tales and things that were passed down generationally through our families, through the mothers and the fathers of our family, weren't written down. Recipes weren't recorded and written down. But indeed, we live in a day and time now where the accessibility to documentation is not just for the rich, the wealthy, or the white, but it's now available to everybody. And that has evolved now that we consider devices, gadgets. You have journaling gadgets, by the way, Anthony. Um, there's one I like. I can't think of what it's called right now. I'll try and find it before I leave you. It's an app that reminds you to journal. You can set it to remind you to journal at any particular or any particular number of times a day, um, and it will remind you to journal. There's another journal app that will not only remind you to journal, but will be keeping track of your data, like your photos and your pictures. So, like somebody like me, who's at the second line one day and is at the jazz funeral the next, and is at a ceremony the next. I'm taking pictures, I'm snapping video, I'm checking in the swarm. And so this app is pulling out points of reminder, you know that helps to sort of motivate me to journal. You now have pictures and videos to go along with your journaling. I use another app for my gardening. So when I'm checking the health of my airway, my plants, my fruits, my vegetables, my herbs, that's being now stored in an application. So that now can be added to my app. I'm sorry, to my journaling process as well. So that's great. Um, for those who are initiating, then they are now also documenting certain things as it relates to their head, certain things as it relates to their ancestors, and then certain things perhaps as it relates to Orisha, Loa, other forces that they might be working with or operating with um, at the time. So there are many ways to go at the journaling. I just stress that you start somewhere, start basic, and then increase the complexity and the detail of what you are documenting and recording. Old folks used to say, when you know better, you do better. I'm going to go to the phone lines for a moment. Area code 518. Area code 518. Who's calling and where are you calling from?
Hello, yes, I'm calling from Oakland, California.
Greetings. Who's calling?
Yeah, Tamika.
How can we help you, beloved? What's going on?
Okay, I'm being pulled by spirit. I just want to know what is the message so they can stop pulling on me and pushing on me.
Okay, well, hold on. I'm gonna answer that, but let me speak to something in the chat first. Univero, you've been listening to this show off and on for quite some time. I never talk about God in the Abrahamic fashion. I only speak of God in the Abrahamic fashion when we are discussing Christianity, when we're discussing the Bible, when we're discussing the Quran, when we're discussing Judaism. I never talk about God in the Abrahamic fashion. In fact, I believe God to be so much bigger than the God you know in the Abrahamic fashion. So having said that, Tamika, God speaks in a soft, still voice. Even people who claim not to know God, even people who claim to be atheists, even people who claim to be agnostic, God speaks in a soft, still voice. It's not a male voice, it's not a female voice, it's a soft, still voice. And therefore, we often cannot hear that voice over the many other voices that are already pre-recorded in your head. Starting with the voice of your mother, who's the first voice that you learn to know and understand. But then there becomes the voices of all the other family, friends, relatives, TV, radio, exposure that we gain as we develop, from childhood, into our adulthood. So that makes sometimes hearing and interpreting very difficult. And then when you add trauma, that may or may not be the case with you, but then because I'm speaking in generals, then when you add trauma, past life trauma, PTSD, post-traumatic slave disorder, all sorts of other, traumas to that, cacophony of voices, then it becomes, we become distant from and isolated from the voice of God. Now, let me say it another way.
Okay.
I am because my creators are. I am because my creators are. That goes back to capital G, lowercase g. When I use a lowercase g, I'm talking about the Bible, universal. When I use a capital G, I'm talking about us and God that transcends religion, Tamika. So if you cannot hear the voice of God clearly, then often you are not hearing your own voice clearly, because you're trying to now compete with mama's voice, daddy's voice, the preacher voice, the school teacher's voice, the politician's voice, the pop cultural voice. Some of us don't talk about politics in public because it's not politically correct. Some of us don't talk about religion in public because, we either going to disagree or, so. So there's a thin veil between God's voice and your own voice. So I believe that if you can't hear God's voice clearly, you aren't hearing your own voice clearly either. And so that's why questions like, what's my purpose? What's my role? What should I be doing? We sometimes think that's something that we are looking to God to sort of expose for us, while at the same time, we're really looking to ourselves for greater exposure
to understand
of who we are to and for ourselves. Are you following me? Am I making sense? So it's only in Western culture and Western society that we've created this great distance between God, or the God out there in the sky, or even spirit, as if the spirit realm, spirituality somehow exists outside of ourselves, who and what we are. Letter R on my.
I know.
Go ahead.
I understand what you're saying, but it's more like I just feel the pull energy around me, but I know it's coming from inside. I'm just trying to understand, what's the message? I'm being thrown around in my house when I'm sleeping, and it's difficult because I'm waking up 3 in the morning every night, and I'm just sitting there trying to figure out what is going on.
Now, beloved Tamika, please hear me with all due respect, because I'm going to say exactly the exact same thing I just said. I hear you saying, I'm trying to figure out what is God trying to say.
Why am I being yeah, it's like, why am I being pulled and pushed and pulled and pushed and tugged and turned and tossed?
Hold on. You're speaking.
What is it all about?
Again, and so let me ask you, what are you all about? What you all about? Because if you're hearing what I'm saying, you're again speaking as if God is trying to tell you something. The ancestors are trying to tell you something that's outside you. I'm trying to get you to understand that I and I are root. God and I are the same. You trying to figure out what God is trying.
I know. I just said that I feel it. I feel it in me, but I feel it around me.
So I'm suggesting that the question.
Didn't say that.
I did hear you. You're not hearing me, beloved. So the question is, what is it about you that you are not willing to hear? What is it about you that you are not willing to explore? What is it about you that you are not trying to tap in, but you're using the words, what is God trying to tell me? What is the answer? No, what are you trying to tell yourself about yourself? So that absence of awareness of God, because what we do is we go on with our life. We work, we party, we marry, we as if somehow that God thing is separate from who we are. And there is no, we've been taught separation through oppression, through white supremacy, through racism, through world religion, but there is no separation. So when I hear somebody say, God's trying to tell me something, I just can't figure out what it is. What are you trying to tell yourself? What are you working hard not to see, not to explore, not to examine about yourself? And that's the beginning point to understanding the spiritual gifts. That's why this list includes everything from lyrics, words, music, imagination.
Yeah.
I would ask you, how creative are you? How much time do you spend daydreaming? How much time do you spend?
None.
And usually people who don't dream don't hear God. Usually people who aren't creative don't hear God. Usually people who are intuitive don't hear God. All the things that are on this list.
I'm very intuitive. I am, but I'm not trying to, utilize that. It's like,
Beloved, I hear you saying exactly what I've been saying for the last hour and a half. You just repeated verbatim something I said.
That's what I'm not trying to wake up to. I'm not trying to wake up to that.
That's the block. And right now, that's the message. Right now, that's the message. You trying not to hear me.
Like,
God is saying you're trying not to hear me, but I'm going to make sure you hear. Right now, that is the message. Right now, because until you know for clarity who you are, then you can't begin to answer those other questions honestly and with clarity. See, again, the problem when we seek outside validation. Yeah, when we seek outside validation, for some odd reason, Jim Jones just came to my mind. Poor people, Black people, Hispanic people, people of color, people who were otherwise struggling in their communities, gave up everything they had, sold what little they had to go run off with this man to the jungle, looking to fulfill answers to the questions of who am I? Looking for a sense of community, looking for a sense of connectedness, looking for a sense of somebody else is looking out for me, and I'm looking out for someone else. My life is valuable now because someone else also depends on my life. And that's often what a healer, a preacher, a teacher, a nurse, they're pulling from some of the same energy. But you have to find out who you are first to become the teacher, to become the nurse.
Right.
And then they take those skills and then apply them in the way that best mirrors their image. I remember being in college, oh my God, and not having a clue what my major should have been. And I know a lot of kids do that, and the financial aid force you to write down a major and a minor, and you feel sort of backed into a corner of self-explanation of something many haven't had a chance to fully explore yet. And often we don't know enough about sort of the career choice that we make between high school and a freshman in college to know what that looked like. You know, I might want to be a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
Well, what is that? What does that look like? And do you know that there are many types of psychiatrists, not just one type,
Right.
not just
Yeah.
one thing. So as you continue
Mhm.
to explore, and I got a few more things on this list, ritual and ceremony trigger us
Mhm.
to spiritual gifts and
Oh,
why we
okay.
have gifts and why we use gifts. Letter S will be athletics, yoga, body manipulation, walking. So when I hear someone say, well, I don't remember my dreams or I don't hear the voice of God, I also will often ask them, how often do you walk? Because when you walk
Every day.
long distances, it's like prayer, right? It's like a meditation, right?
Right.
Your mind
Mhm.
goes and is freed up in a way. And it's another way in which spiritual gifts begin to speak to us and through us and manifest within us.
Mhm.
Sensory perception, sound, taste, smell, sight. You know, certain smells.
I'm easy with the I'm easy with the sensing thing. I
Yeah,
could sense when
fruitcake,
someone's pulling or tugging it.
fruitcake, eggnog, cinnamon bread.
Had some
That
recently.
smell like
Had
holidays,
some
right? That smell like Thanksgiving, Christmas.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a sensory perception. And for some people, if the
Yes.
smells is right, then it takes you back to grandma's house, or it takes you back to your mama,
Right.
or something from the past, or something that you experienced, you know, at some point
Mhm.
in our evolution. Education is a trigger to spiritual gifts. So
Mhm.
reading more books, studying more, particularly from an ancestral lineage-based background. Tamika, I don't know if we've talked before, but I strongly suggest people have DNA done, Ancestry.com,
Yeah, my daughter
23andMe,
did it already.
and do
My daughter did that.
for yourself, because her results are not going to look like your results at all.
Mhm.
At all. She's going to have a little bit of you in her test,
Yeah.
but she got a whole lot more of her daddy and her 4 grandparents.
Than me.
So you've got to get,
Yeah, she do.
you've got to get, I'm talking about in her results, beloved, in her DNA test. When I offer someone to have DNA tests done and they say, oh, well, my cousin did it, my daughter did it, my mama did it. No, you have to have it done for yourself. My sister Wapani and I, our results don't look the same. They don't look the same. We have similar,
Okay.
we have a similar number of a certain amount of chemistry, for sure, which
Yeah.
ties us to both of our parents. But when looked at
Right.
individually, our results don't look the same. And let me make it easier for you to grasp. People with diabetes in their family, diabetes don't affect everybody. Diabetes can skip a
True.
generation. High blood pressure can skip a generation, you know, if it's genetic
Right.
and in the blood, and then show up again. Someone, you know, 3 or 4 generations below the grandparent that had blue eyes can now be black with blue eyes, but their parents didn't have blue
True.
eyes. So it's the same way in terms of trying to interpret your DNA results using someone else's tests. So I strongly suggest that when you can, that you get a test for yourself and begin to go through that and begin to look at again who your parents are, who their parents were, and those who came before as a critical element to how we also develop spiritually and spiritual gifts. I don't know if you were with me earlier when I talked about music, you know, Aretha Franklin, C.L. Franklin.
Yeah.
You know, you look at families like that where maybe music is generational. Maybe church is even generational, you know. And so when we start looking at the DNA test, it gets much more specific. I strongly suggest getting more than one test, by the way. But for the other people who are listening to me, one test is not enough. Ancestry.com is not going to give you everything. And then when you go to do 23andMe, it's going to look similar but very different to the Ancestry.com.
Okay.
Not because they are wrong, but because there are different aspects of your genome that are being pulled. And Ancestry.com is actually more popular than 23andMe is still. And I think they have a lot to do with how much it costs. Also, I think the medical component to 23andMe might also be a reason some people are hesitant. But I find that because of that difference in popularity, I have more blood relatives that I know of personally on Ancestry.com. A lot of people that I'm meeting on 23andMe I never heard of before. And I'm talking about second cousins, third cousins, not that far away.
Wow.
People would be surprised how quickly we lose connection with our family when we don't keep up, when we don't have family reunions, when we don't come together. I mean, within a generation, you can lose touch with who's what. I have nieces and nephews right now that I've never met before. And if it wasn't for Facebook, I wouldn't know who they was if it wasn't for Facebook and TikTok and Instagram.
Oh, wow.
So imagine if I had kids out in the world, you know, with as many sisters and brothers as I have, you know, and then they meet up with other relatives that they don't know, you know, it's a hot mess if we don't pay attention.
True.
Yes, indeed.
Okay. Good Lord.
I know, boo. It's work. I know. But it's well worth the work. It is so well worth the work. It has changed my life.
You just picked up on that I do not know anything about my family. That's true.
And I started with hearing the voice of God. I equated hearing the voice of God with hearing one's own voice. And then I equated that with taking the journey of really understanding more about who we are through DNA and ancestry.
Yeah, so they want me to go backwards so that way I can know how to move forward. I understand.
Yeah,
I know where I come from to know where I'm going.
I wrote a poem about that once upon a time, going back to move forward. Yeah, we need to go backwards to move forward. I think we need to move backwards, not just as Black people or Africans or Indigenous or Aboriginal people, but humanity. And the pandemic gave us a chance. Yes, the pandemic gave us a chance to see that, because those 5 or 6 months when nothing moving, and the pollution cleared up for a while, and nature started coming back in places that it wasn't thriving at before, because we weren't killing it off. Yeah, we definitely need to go back. Yeah, we need to go back to move forward. So I certainly appreciate you, beloved, and thank you so much for calling in. I want to give my last 5 points on this alphabet list before I run out of time. So you can stay with me, and if you have a question, I'll bring you back on in a minute. And thank you everyone in the chat for being with me. Let me make sure I'm not missing nobody. Jody Netta, greetings, beloved. Peace and blessings. Thank you for your participation and coming through with us today. Let's see. Evelyn Preston, greetings to you and yours, beloved. Thank you. Come on in. Let's see. You journal randomly, Jody Netta, especially during periods in her life when she feels creative or periods of isolation, to get her thoughts out of her mind. Yeah, that's very good. And as I said with the other question, Anthony and the others who asked about the journaling, you know, you just got to start where you are. Journaling is easier said than done for some people. Some people don't seem to have a problem with it. You know, they can work it into their schedule. They, they got it booked in with vitamins in the morning or before they go to bed at night, or, whatever, and it seems to flow. Then there's the issue of writing. With our devices, many of us have gotten away from writing Some of us have lost touch with vocabulary and finding your words, and that is helpful, even cathartic on many levels in how we interact with each other, your children, your spouse, your co-workers, because you have a greater a degree of words to pull from. I think many people in society today don't have enough words. We see that on reality TV. We too quick to throw hands uh, as opposed to finding our words and knowing how to express ourselves. And then there's the aspect of lack of understanding. We've gotten so far away from understanding words and their meaning. There's some things that I can say that some of you just would not understand, just won't understand. And I'm speaking to education, I'm speaking to knowledge, I'm speaking to your ability to work around a thesaurus in a dictionary, an encyclopedia, your ability to spell encyclopedia. I'm speaking to that. And it's not sort of politically correct in today's environment to do that. But you're going to find as I move forward into this reality show, I'm going to get a little bit more shadier, y'all. I'm going to start saying a lot more stuff that normally I just let roll around in my head while I try to be diplomatic and divine all blessed. Here in this space, one of the effects and benefits of this show is sort of freeing up my own ability to express and speak my own truth, which to some degree I've through being professional and maintaining a certain decorum and a certain type of environment in doing this podcast for so many years. I don't say a whole lot, despite what you all think. I hold back a lot. I don't share a lot as it rolls around in my head. So I'm going to be doing a lot more of that in coming weeks as a result of the reality show. And so I'm sure it will, find its way into the podcast, whether I, want it here or not. It just will be. So just love me as I am, y'all. I hear you, Univero. I hear you. I do. No, I hear you, and I hear you at a deeper level than you might even envision right now. It's real. It would be real easy for me to say I had the wrong parents. I had the wrong dad in particular. Not so much my mom, but most certainly my dad. It would be easy for me to say that. And when I was young and ignorant and mad and angry and out there on the street, I often spoke or did not speak of my parents at all, of my upbringing at all. I could have said, oh my God, if I chose these parents, to come into this world. And I believe and teach that indeed we choose our parents. Indeed, we choose our mentors. And there are other Ifa priests, Babalaos, Ianifa, Hogans, Mambos that I've encountered through my journey who have said the exact same thing. Even if we're talking about godparent mentors, you chose the wrong mentors. You chose the wrong mentors. And that's not a judgment, but more a self-realization that indeed we have chosen the life paths that we would walk, that we would be exposed to, even pre-incubation, even before we came into our mother's wombs. We made some choices and some decisions about what we were willing to experience and what we were willing to go through here, including what we might judge as traumatic, as negative. I believe on some level, some of us chose to be a party to the middle passage. Some of us chose to be here on the planet at this point in time to do something, to change something, to make a difference about something. But again, it goes back to how we've been indoctrinated about God, big G, little g, how we've been indoctrinated about good and evil, how we've been indoctrinated about suffering. You know, we got to suffer. We here to suffer, and then just maybe things are going to be, you know, good on the other side, as opposed to really understanding how, from a more indigenous aboriginal perspective, duality, like the yin yang sign, the duality of negative and positive. So indeed, we chose a degree of duality, even coming in for our best interests, for our own development, for our own good. Heaven forbid we don't learn, we don't grow, we don't evolve because we have it too well. And see, here it is again. I'm going into another topic that can get me in a whole lot of trouble. Celebrities. Oh, I've had my opportunity with celebrities from many levels. You know, local celebrities, national celebrities, international celebrities, music celebrities, acting or performance celebrities, authors. You know, I've had my share, politicians, you know, of exposure to celebrities. And so have you, those of you among me who pay attention to reality TV. And some of the worst dramatic circumstances come out of the most entitled, privileged backgrounds, you know, and so you have so much, and so much is available to you, whether it be material things, whether it be money, access to people, resources, your way into a particular industry, you know, and we have seen by way of reality TV, I don't have to call anybody in particular, do I? You know, we've seen them act the worst. We've seen them demonstrate the worst. We've seen them demonstrate spiritual immaturity, emotional immaturity, personal issues of integrity, morality, you know, virtue, you know, and these are people that we say had everything. Their mama had everything. You know, they had access to whatever they want, whatever they need. So why don't people who have access choose to do things the right way? Choose to do things maybe the hard way. Maybe choose to do things the way everybody has to do things, you know. Yet we look at, you know, Marcus Garvey, Bob Marley, your Dr. King, your Malcolm X, you know, people who may have come from more struggled backgrounds, impoverished backgrounds, challenged backgrounds, you know, who grow and develop, the Oprah Winfrey, to become, you know, mega gods, you know, in the universe. So again, I think it comes back to how we have been taught God, big G, little g, how we've been taught spirituality, spiritual power, and then how we use that. When do we need that? You know, we've all heard the story, you know, when people are struggling, they make their way to church. When people hit the bottom, they make their way back to religion. You know, but when things are going good and they're flying high on the eating high on the cow, as they used to say back in the day, you know, doing well, life is abundant. They're not thinking about God, church, spirit, spirituality, even, you know, in that case. So the last 5 on my list, after education being a trigger to not only awareness of spiritual gifts, but development of spiritual gifts. Letter V would be extraterrestrials, and the belief and or understanding that we have been manipulated, quite possibly procreated by more evolved beings of some sort that we are still not totally aware of or clear about. W would be exposure, where two or more are gathered in my name for my Abrahamic faithful. Where two or more are gathered in my name, but exposure, being around certain people of a certain gift, of a certain energy, of a certain vibration, and internalizing that either through spiritual exchange, and through demonstration. Sort of the idea, that so many now want to uh, be witches and Ianifas and Babalaos and Mambos and Hogans and Bokuas and root workers and conjurers has a great deal to do with exposure and seeing that exposed via social media through a particular time period, and that sort of growing into sort of the Black witch social climate subgroup, subculture that we sort of see manifesting today. And it will continue to evolve, grow. Aspects of that will wither away. The instant psychic reader, the quick tarot, all of that will wither away in time. And as many of you will continue on this journey and will take on serious initiation, serious growth, serious development at the academic and at the cultural level, and carry our traditions into the future, again, in a new way that fits the time, but in a way that will more expose the authenticities at the root of these traditions that mask under many names. X would be public and personal confirmation. People telling you you have a gift. Total strangers wanting to know why you know things about them that they never told you, that they could not have possibly have relayed to you in any public way. Repetition, again, through persons, public or personal, that confirm certain dynamics of spiritual gifts that manifest through you. And sometimes you manifest these gifts in the moment without even knowing that that is happening. And it sometimes takes people to say, I feel a certain way when I'm around you, when I'm in your presence. I feel a certain way when I come into your house. You say things that you shouldn't know, or that tap certain areas of my understanding. And then the letter Y in my alphabet, spiritual triggers to spiritual development of gifts. Writing and journaling, which we covered early on, because it's very hard for me not to talk about journaling and the dynamics of the development of these gifts. But journaling can also help to expose these gifts. You'll be writing and journaling and go back, months later, and some of the stuff that you write in your journal you won't recognize as being your own, particularly if you write with a pen and paper. Even you'll note that sometimes even your handwriting will shift depending on what you're talking about. Some of you won't realize how depressed you really are until you go back and read your journal of 6 months. Some of you won't realize how happy and how evolved your life has become, how blessed you truly are, until you go back and read your journal 6 months, a year back. But also in terms of exposing and triggering the development of spiritual gifts, that too can and will show itself in writing and journaling. Even in imaginative, fictional, creative writing. Remember, there's a thin veil between the spirit realm. There's a thin veil between God and our own consciousness, God and our own spirit, dreams, visions, daydreams, imagination, creativity, intuition, empathy. It's a very thin line between God, that energy, and ourselves. They might co-share a space even. And then letter Z is geographic location. Indeed, places like New Orleans, places like Mecca, places like Osogbo, Nigeria, places like Sedona, Arizona can trigger spiritual energy and spiritual experiences that speak to the development of spiritual gifts. It took me 2 hours just to get through my alphabet of creative triggers, rather tragic or benign, that lead to the seeking and the development and the awareness of spiritual gifts. So in the next show, I definitely want to talk more about spiritual gifts from God, spiritual gifts from the ancestors, animal and human spiritual gifts, genetic and biological spiritual gifts, development or developed spiritual gifts, those gifts that we develop, and then learned spiritual gifts, gifts that indeed we can teach ourselves to do and to develop. God can talk to us, spirit can talk to us, a host of spirits can talk to us. Your head can talk to you, your heart can talk to you, your body talks to you, indeed, your flesh talks to you. Your memory can play and replay and talk to you and can say things that were never said in the original moments, but can now somehow speak as if it were true to you. Some of you heard negative things said that were never said, that were never said. In some cases, weren't even implied, but they speak and sound true to you because your flesh speaks, your body speaks, your heart speaks, your head speaks, your past speaks, your trauma speaks. And so it's a lot of speaking and conversation going on for us to indeed clarify gifts. And particularly the younger you are, the earlier on. It typically takes some time, some decades, some maturity, some maturing, some growing up to begin to operate within these gifts. Not that we cannot operate within them in our teens. My gifts saved my life in my teens, but I was not aware. I was often unconscious. Somebody said God looks out for babies and fools, you know, and again, it's a part of even those early inclinations of prophecy and prophetic
90
vision,
seconds.
intuition. It's a process of learning who we are, just like it's a process of learning who God is. It's a process of learning who the ancestors are. It's a process of learning who your relatives are. It's a process. Your pain and your ego house both your strengths and your insecurities. But sometimes your insecurities will overtalk your strengths in the conversation of pain.
60 seconds.
In the conversation of pain and ego. And along the journey of development of personal spiritual gifts and awareness, your pain, your ego, your memory, your past, your body, your heart, your head, your flesh, God, the ancestors, the spirits, all are communicating in the development of personal spiritual gifts and awareness. You can mask weird, but you cannot hide different. Let me say that again. You can mask weirdness. You can learn how to act accordingly to sort of mask weirdness, but you cannot hide different.
10 seconds.
You cannot hide being different. You cannot hide being called. You cannot hide distinct nuances that show up as gifts, skills, talents that speak to you, speak through you, speak through your hands. And so people in Western society are programmed to respond to weird, but often miss the more nuanced details of difference. Why do we require so much diversity training? We are all taught to respond to program stereotypes and to ignore or disparage difference. So it's no shock to me, no surprise to me that everybody wants to be a witch. Everybody wants to be a psychic reader. Everybody wants to be a tarot reader. It's no shock or surprise to me, but nobody wants to be different. Nobody wants to walk the path of difference. And that comes with exploring self, shadow work, light work, going deep within to better understand who we are as divine and earthly hybrids, as part God and part animal, part human in nature. So I'm grateful for each and every one of you and everyone who's been with me and stuck with me and shared your questions and comments during the course of the show. I'm going to try and clean up my chat here. Thank you, Queen Sheba. I'm so with you, beloved. Thank you so much for that. Evelyn Preston, thank you so much. Jody Netta, thank you so much. Thank you, Nita Lloyd. Universal, thank you so much, beloved. Danette Gibbs, thank you. I look forward to seeing you later in the week. Thank you, Jean, for coming by. We most certainly appreciate you. Anthony, thank you so much. I appreciate your contribution and your showing up today. Please do keep coming back. We appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you. So remember until next time that all is truly and indeed a blessing. If you can just see beyond the veils, for it's all just an illusion and a test. One of the greatest divine mysteries of this life cycle. Ashe, Asheo, Ashe. Greetings to Goddess Initiative.